The hallways of St. Andrew's College gleamed like glass, marble floors polished to perfection, sunlight streaming through tall windows. It was the kind of private university where tuition cost more than most people's annual salary, and where names mattered more than grades. Among the students strolling between lectures was Chloe Whitmore, the daughter of real estate mogul Robert Whitmore, the kind of man who donated wings to hospitals just to have his name carved in stone. Chloe was beautiful, privileged, and used to being the loudest person in the room. She wore designer sneakers, carried the newest phone, and walked like the world belonged to her. In a way, it did. That morning, she was rushing to her economics lecture, iced latte in hand, when she nearly tripped over a yellow wet floor sign. Seriously? She muttered, barely catching her balance. At the end of the corridor, a janitor was mopping the floor, an older black man, calm, quiet, his gray uniform neat but worn. He looked up, his expression patient. "Careful there, miss," he said with a polite smile. "Floor's still drying." Chloe glanced down at him, not to him, irritation flashing across her face. "Maybe don't mop during class change, genius." He didn't respond. He just nodded and moved the bucket aside, letting her pass. She rolled her eyes and stepped around him dramatically, whispering under her breath, "Unbelievable. Can't they hire people who know what they're doing?" He heard it. He always did. But years on the job had taught him not to take it personally. Later that day, Chloe met her friends in the cafeteria. They were gathered around a table, laughing too loudly, scrolling through their phones. "Chloe," one of them called. "You missed it. The janitor spilled his mop water right in front of the library earlier. Almost slipped on it myself." Chloe snorted. "Of course he did. That guy's like a ghost, always lurking, never talking. Probably can't find a better job." Her friends laughed, but one of them, a quieter girl named Tessa, frowned slightly. "He's always really polite, though. I've seen him help kids pick up their books. He even fixed the vending machine last week." Chloe waved a dismissive hand. "He's a janitor, Tess. That's literally what he's paid to do. You don't need to turn it into a charity story." The group giggled again, and the conversation moved on, about parties, professors, and plans for the weekend. But in the far corner of the cafeteria, a custodian's cart squeaked softly across the tiles. The same man. The same quiet expression. He was emptying trash bins while they mocked him, but his eyes carried something deeper, something almost knowing. That evening, Chloe stayed late on campus to finish an essay she'd procrastinated on. The library was nearly empty, the echo of her keyboard the only sound. When she got up to leave, she realized the rain had started outside, sheets of it pounding against the glass. She sighed and pulled out her phone. Driver's not answering. Great. "Miss Whitmore?" She turned and saw the janitor, the same man from earlier, standing by the door, holding a stack of books he'd just reshelved. He gestured toward the window. "Storm's getting bad. You might want to wait it out." She gave him a strained smile. "I'll be fine. I don't exactly melt in the rain." He nodded slowly. "I'm sure you don't." Then, almost to himself, he added, "Though pride can make anyone forget their umbrella." Her expression hardened. "Excuse me?" He smiled faintly. "Have a good night, Miss Whitmore." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the quiet. The next morning, a campus-wide announcement went out. "Attention all students, please welcome Dr. Benjamin Carter, our new adjunct professor for social economics and public ethics." Chloe scrolled past it without interest, until she entered class later that afternoon. The room quieted as the new professor walked in. He set his worn leather briefcase on the desk, turned to face them, and smiled. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said, his voice deep, calm, familiar. "My name is Dr. Benjamin Carter. I'll be teaching this course." Chloe froze. Her mouth fell open. It was him. The janitor. The man she'd insulted, standing now in front of the class, not in a gray uniform, but in a crisp shirt and tie, eyes sharp and intelligent. And when his gaze met hers, he paused for just a second. Then smiled. "Miss Whitmore," he said evenly. "I believe we've met." The class turned to look at her. Her face burned crimson. And for the first time in her life, Chloe Whitmore didn't know what to say. For the rest of that class, Chloe Whitmore could barely lift her eyes from her notebook. Every word Dr. Benjamin Carter spoke sounded like it echoed directly toward her, not cruelly, not mockingly, but with the quiet authority of someone who knew. Social economics, he began, pacing slowly before the whiteboard, isn't about numbers. It's about people, how we see each other, how we value one another. And most importantly, he paused, how we misjudge one another. Chloe felt heat crawl up her neck. Around her, students nodded, taking notes, unaware that the professor's words had landed like arrows in her chest. Dr. Carter continued, some people think worth is measured by titles, money, or what you wear. But sometimes the person cleaning your floor understands integrity better than the person sitting behind a desk. The class laughed softly, thinking it was just an observation. But Chloe knew better. Her throat tightened. She stared at the desk, her pen frozen above the paper. When the bell finally rang, she practically bolted for the door, but Dr. Carter's voice stopped her cold. Miss Whitmore? She turned slowly. Stay for a moment, please. The rest of the students filed out. The room fell silent. Dr. Carter leaned against the desk, folding his arms. You looked uncomfortable today. Chloe forced a smile. No, not at all. I was just surprised. I can imagine, he said mildly. Seeing your college janitor teaching your course can do that. Her stomach twisted. I didn't mean. He held up a hand, stopping her. You don't have to explain. I've worked here a long time. I've mopped these halls for 15 years while finishing my doctorate at night. People didn't see me then. Most still don't. Chloe blinked. You finished a doctorate while working here? Yes, he said simply. Hard work and humility make a good education. But not everyone learns that in school. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. She swallowed hard. Look, I shouldn't have said what I said the other day. He studied her face. Do you even remember what you said? She hesitated. Then, quietly, that they should hire people who know what they're doing. Dr. Carter nodded slowly. You were right. Her head jerked up. What? They should hire people who know what they're doing. The question is, do you know what you're doing? She frowned. Excuse me? He smiled faintly. Do you know what kind of person you're becoming? Because education doesn't just teach you how to make money, Miss Whitmore. It teaches you how to treat people. And I'm afraid that's a class you're still failing. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Class dismissed, he said quietly. That night, Chloe sat on her dorm bed, staring at her reflection in the dark window. For the first time, she felt something she'd never felt before, shame. Not because she'd been embarrassed. She'd been embarrassed plenty of times before, tripping at parties, forgetting homework, being called out in class. That was temporary. This was different. This was the kind of shame that came when someone showed you who you really were. And you didn't like the reflection. The next morning, she arrived early for Dr. Carter's lecture, earlier than anyone else. He was already there, writing equations on the board. She hesitated at the door, then stepped in. Good morning, she said softly. He glanced at her, expression neutral. Good morning, Miss Whitmore. She fidgeted. I brought you something. He turned, eyebrows raised slightly. She held out a paper cup. Coffee. Black. I saw you drink it yesterday. He took it after a pause. Thank you. She gave a nervous smile. Thought I'd try starting class by not failing today. For the first time, he smiled, genuinely. That's a good place to start. When class began, Chloe listened more closely than ever. Dr. Carter didn't just talk about economics, he talked about empathy. How we treat the lowest paid workers in a society, he said, shows more about that society's wealth than any bank account ever could. Chloe's pen moved furiously across the page. And as the lecture continued, she realized something that frightened her. She wasn't taking notes to pass the class. She was taking notes because, for the first time, she wanted to understand. By the end of the week, she'd stayed after every lecture, asking questions, not to impress, but to learn. Dr. Carter noticed. When she finally gathered the courage to ask him, "Do you really think people can change?" he didn't hesitate. "I know they can," he said. "But only when they start listening to the people they used to ignore." Chloe nodded slowly. And in that moment, the walls of privilege that had always surrounded her began, quietly, to crack. For the next few weeks, something changed in Chloe Whitmore, though at first, she couldn't quite name it. She started walking to class instead of being dropped off by her driver. She stopped wearing the loud jewelry that used to jingle when she moved, and she smiled more, though mostly to herself. But the biggest change came one Monday morning, when she saw two custodians struggling to move a broken vending machine near the student center. Her first instinct was to walk past. That was what she'd always done. Instead, she stopped. "Hey," she said hesitantly, "do you guys need a hand?" Both men turned, surprised. One of them, a thin man with salt and pepper hair, blinked. Sure, miss. You sure you want to?" "Yeah," she said, grabbing the edge of the machine. "Why not?" 10 minutes later, she was sweating and covered in dust, laughing for the first time in months as they managed to wedge the machine into place. When they thanked her, she shrugged. "Guess I just needed a workout." As she turned to leave, she noticed Dr. Carter standing at the far end of the hall, a folder in his hand. He'd been watching. Their eyes met, and he gave the faintest nod before walking away. No smile. No words. Just quiet acknowledgement. And somehow, that meant more than any praise she'd ever gotten in her life. That afternoon, she walked into Dr. Carter's office, a small, plain room tucked at the back of the faculty wing. Stacks of papers, half-read books, and a single-framed photo of a younger Dr. Carter with a woman and a little girl on his desk. She hesitated at the door. "Professor?" He looked up from his grading. "Miss Whitmore. I was wondering if I could help." He raised an eyebrow. "Help with what?" "With the campus." She gestured vaguely. "I mean, cleaning, fixing things, whatever the custodial team does. I think I could learn something from it." Dr. Carter leaned back in his chair, studying her for a long moment. "Why?" he asked finally. "Because," she said, meeting his eyes, "I think it's time I start seeing what I've been blind to." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he smiled slightly. "Report to maintenance at 7 tomorrow morning. Wear something you don't mind getting dirty." The next day, Chloe showed up in an old hoodie and jeans, hair tied back, sneakers already soaked from the early morning dew. The other custodians looked surprised but amused. One of them, Mr. Leon, handed her a mop. "You ever used one of these before, Princess?" She laughed nervously. "Can't say I have." "Well," he said, grinning, "today's your lucky day." By noon, her back ached and her hands were raw. She'd emptied trash cans, scrubbed floors, and wiped chalk dust from whiteboards that students never noticed were always spotless. And for the first time, she understood, really understood, what it meant to be invisible. Every student who passed her looked right through her. No smiles, no thank yous, just shoes squeaking past on clean floors she just mopped. When she went to refill her bucket, Dr. Carter appeared in the doorway of the hall. "Everything all right?" he asked. She exhaled, brushing hair from her face. "I didn't realize how hard it was." He nodded. "That's because you never had to look down before." She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "I owe you an apology. Not just for what I said, but for how I've lived." He tilted his head. "Then you're already learning faster than most." That evening, as Chloe finished cleaning the lecture hall, she found something tucked under her mop bucket, a folded note. It was written in neat, deliberate handwriting. "You're doing good work. Not because anyone's watching, but because you're finally seeing. BC." She smiled softly, folding the note into her pocket like a secret. Over the next few weeks, Chloe became a quiet fixture among the maintenance team. She helped Mr. Leon repaint the student lounge, restock supplies, and even repaired an old bookshelf with her own hands. Every so often, Dr. Carter would pass by, offering a nod or a few simple words, "Steady hands," or "Good work." Nothing more. But she didn't need more. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't doing something for credit, reputation, or praise. She was doing it to be better. One rainy afternoon, she spotted Dr. Carter sitting outside under the covered walkway, sipping coffee and reading a thick binder of papers. She sat beside him quietly. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" "Just being the janitor." He smiled faintly. "No one really stops being who they are, Chloe. They just grow into what they're meant to be." She nodded slowly. "I hope I can do that too." "You can," he said softly. "But you'll have to work for it, every day. Change isn't a moment. It's maintenance." Chloe looked at him, surprised. "Maintenance," she repeated, smiling. "Like cleaning." He grinned. "Exactly like cleaning. It's never done. But if you keep at it, it changes everything around you. By the end of the semester, everyone at St. Andrew's College had heard the rumors. The Whitmore girl, the one who used to host rooftop parties and wear sunglasses indoors, was now working with the janitors. Some said she'd gone broke. Others said it was a punishment from the dean. But most just laughed. And no one laughed louder than her so-called friends. It started one Friday morning in the cafeteria. Chloe was sitting alone at a small table, sipping black coffee, something she'd picked up from Dr. Carter, when Tessa and the others walked in. They spotted her immediately. "Chloe," one of them called, smiling in that sharp, fake way rich kids learn early. "We saw you mopping the hallway yesterday. Is that, like, a new charity thing?" The others giggled. Chloe looked up calmly. "No. Just helping." Another friend, Harper, the loudest of the bunch, smirked. "Helping? Honey, you're covered in cleaning solution half the time. It's embarrassing. You're a Whitmore." Chloe set her cup down. "Maybe that's the problem." Harper blinked. "Excuse me?" Chloe's voice stayed steady. "Maybe being a Whitmore means I've spent too long thinking I'm better than everyone else." For a moment, the table fell silent. Then Harper laughed. "Wow. Guess Professor Mop changed you." Chloe felt a flicker of anger but let it pass. "Yeah," she said simply. "He did." She stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked out, head high, heart pounding. It hurt, more than she wanted to admit. Losing friends, being mocked, it stung. But she also realized something: she didn't want their approval anymore. She wanted respect. And that started with respecting herself. That afternoon, in Dr. Carter's class, Chloe sat in the front row. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw was set. After class, as the students filed out, he said quietly, "Rough day." She smiled faintly. "People don't really like it when you stop being who they expect." He nodded. "No, they don't. Change is uncomfortable, especially for those who aren't doing it." She sighed. "I thought doing the right thing would feel better." "It doesn't always feel good," he said gently. "But it always means something." Later that week, Dr. Carter assigned a class project: research the real value of labor in your community. Present not just numbers, but stories. When Chloe stood before the class the following week, most of them looked skeptical. She began, "When we talk about value, we usually mean money. But real value, human value, is harder to measure." She clicked to her first slide, photos she had taken over the past month: custodians sweeping halls, cafeteria workers stacking trays, groundskeepers tending the gardens in the rain. "These people are the reason our campus looks like it does," she said. "But we walk past them every day like they're part of the furniture." The room fell silent. She went on, voice trembling slightly. "A few months ago, I did that too. I didn't just ignore people, I judged them. And then I met someone who showed me what work and dignity really look like." Her final slide appeared, a photo of Dr. Carter standing beside his mop bucket, sunlight catching the reflection on the wet floor. The class stared, stunned. "His name is Dr. Benjamin Carter," she said. "He cleaned these halls for 15 years before he ever stood here as our professor. And he taught me that education isn't about looking down, it's about learning to see." The room broke into quiet applause, hesitant at first, then stronger, until every student was clapping. Dr. Carter, sitting in the back, didn't move. He just smiled, the proud, quiet smile of a teacher who had seen something bloom where there once was nothing. After class, Chloe found him in his office. "You knew I'd do that, didn't you?" He looked up from his papers. "Do what?" Use you in my presentation. He chuckled. I suspected you might. She leaned against the doorframe. They looked at me differently today. He nodded. Because for the first time, you let them see you, not your name. She hesitated. It felt good. It should, he said softly. That's what truth feels like. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. When Chloe arrived at the maintenance wing, Mr. Leon handed her a folded note, written in the same neat, deliberate handwriting as before. You've learned the lesson, Chloe. But now comes the test. Tomorrow, the college will announce a staff restructuring. Some positions, including mine, may be cut. Sometimes standing up for what's right means standing up alone. BC. Her hands trembled as she read it. Dr. Carter might lose his job. The man who had taught her to see the world differently was about to be erased from it. She folded the note, heart racing. And for the first time, she was the one who had to fight for him.